In this video, we're going to be taking a look at using the free InkScape vector graphics application to create some vector artwork for the purposes of converting it to an embroidery file using the free InkStitch extension for InkScape. So let's go ahead and import the artwork that was sent to us. Someone was watching a video and reached out for help and said, "Hey, could you help me with my design?" And I said, "Sure." So if you have an idea of, or you have a design you're working on, you'd like to see how we would go about tackling it, and for Inkscape and InkStitch, feel free to reach out to us. My embroidery 411 at gmail.com, and be happy to take a look at your design and see what we could do. So in this case, it's a triple applique. The white is going to be a piece of applique, the gray, and then the individual pieces of our letters. Now what I really like to do is I like to control my layers palette. I like to take the time to lay it all out so I could just glance at my layers palette and see exactly what I'm working with. And I think it's really a good idea for you to do the same. So you can see here we have two groups, and the first thing that I saw straight off is, why do we have so many shapes? So because this is a very simple design, so we shouldn't have so many shapes. So I'm just going to delete this one group. Now I've already looked at this design, so I know for sure all those pieces that were in that group we didn't need anyhow. So that we just took care of that real quick. And now you can see here that we actually have a layer within a layer, and I don't like that. So let's go ahead and take care of that. So now we don't have a layer. Well, we still do. There we go. Sometimes it's a little bit tricky to get that layer out on its own. You just got to drop it just right. There we go. Now we're not nested inside. Okay, so we still have a group, which we're going to get rid of that. Just right click and choose ungroup. We don't want groups. I don't like working with groups in InkStitch. I would sooner put it on a separate layer than deal with groups. But, you know, that's to each their own. So this bottom layer, we will call it white background. Now the thing to keep in mind here is InkScape will, InkStitch really will utilize the layers palette from the bottom to the top in its sewing order. So when we are setting up our design file, we have to do it this way. And then this, we're going to call it gray outline. And then we'll create a new layer here and we'll call it blue text. Again, you don't have to do this. This is just me being OCD about things. So first things first, what is path 19? Well, we don't know. It's this little strange anomaly, so we'll get rid of that. Path 18 is our letter K. And what I like to do is let's just name it letter K. Okay? And then it's got to go on the blue layer, right? And then what's this one? Well, that's the letter W. And where's it going? You guessed it, on the blue layer. But above the letter K, remember, it's going to start from the bottom to the top in the stitch order there. So that's important to keep in mind. Letter M. And again, you don't have to do this. I just think it makes a lot of sense to do it, because now we can just glance and see, okay, instead of path 15, now we know that is the letter S. There's no guessing. So we have them all in the proper order. Now, we're done with our blue text for right now, so let's just go ahead and toggle it, that layer off, because we don't need it right now. Okay, so now we're just left with these two items. Okay, and we know that this is the white background. And I'm going to call it white background fabric. Okay, and we'll move that to the white background layer. And then this is the gray outline fabric. Okay, and we don't need the gray right now. Let's go ahead and turn that off. So there we go. So now we simply have the white, okay, because that's all we need to work with. I'm just going to give this a different color so it's a little bit easier to see on screen. So now what we need to do is we need to duplicate this white background fabric. So I am just going to duplicate it. So what is the first thing that we're going to do here when it comes to applique? Well, the first step in embroidery when you're dealing with applique is a placement stitch. That's step number one. Now, we don't want our placement stitch to be right to the edge of our fabric. We want it to be slightly inside. So when we place our fabric over the top of our placement stitch, then the fabric will cover those stitches up. So this, we're going to call the white background, but we want it to be placement stitch. Bingo. Okay, there we go. Okay, I guess I better spell it right. Okay, placement stitch. Now, again, these two shapes right now are the exact same size, so our placement stitch needs to be slightly less. So let's come up here to Path Effects, and we're going to apply an offset path effect, and we're going to apply it in the negative value. So how much offset do we want? Well, that's really up to you, and oops, not sure what happened there. Let me make sure I have the right thing. I'm not sure what happened there. Accidentally deleted it, I guess. We'll try that again. Placement stitch. Okay. And if we want to, we can go ahead and turn off our white background fabric. Might be a little bit easier to see. And on that placement stitch, let's go ahead and just give it a different color. So that might be easier to see. So let's go ahead and go back to Path Effects. And yes, we want to do an offset path effect. And we want it to do -2. I'm going to say 2 millimeters. You decide however much you want, okay? But I think 2 would be fine. So now we didn't really see a whole lot happen, but if we turn on our white background fabric, you will see that now that has been offset to the inside, okay? So for our placement stitch, if we don't want to do any fill, right, but we do want to do some kind of outline, just hit your shift key, and there you go. Now, if you don't like that thickness, you can come over here to your stroke style and decide, okay, well, how big do we want our stroke to be? Maybe 1 millimeter. Okay, I can live with that. So now you can see that's going to be our placement stitch. The machine's going to pause, allows us to put it on our fabric, and what's the next thing we're going to do? Well, the next thing we're going to obviously need is we're going to need a tack down stitch. Okay, so we'll go ahead and duplicate our placement stitch object, and now we're going to have our tack down stitch. Okay. Well, what are we doing there? Well, again, we're going to add a path effect, and I think probably what I would do is go to Path Effects. We did 3 initially, or 2 initially, so let's do 3 this time. So we're going to come just to the inside, but let's give it a striking color outline. Shift click one of those colors, and now you can kind of see what we've got going on here. So if we go back to the display mode and go back to outline, you'll see this. So we have let's go back here, make sure we're talking, yep. So that's our fabric, okay? And then that next piece is going to be our placement stitch, and then this is going to be our tack down stitch, okay? So now the next thing to do is to go ahead and have our stitch for our border, okay? So now this is kind of our next step. So what we're going to do here, and this is the part that's maybe it's a little confusing, maybe not, but maybe just slightly. So for the tack down stitch, let's go ahead and duplicate our tack down. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. And so that next stitch is going to be our, what are we going to call it? Let's call it our applique stitch. Okay, that's going to be our applique stitch. So what we're going to do is we're going to apply a path effect to that. And what are we going to do? Well, let's do negative, I'm just trying to think here. 1.5. It's hard to say, right? So where are we at here? Applique stitch. Oh, okay. I see what we did. I see what we did wrong. So we were at -3, and we're going to just basically be adding to that. So we're going to do negative 4.5. And the reason that we have to do that cumulatively is because we did not convert. This has a editable path effect to it. So that's why when we click on it, you see it says -2, and then when we click on this one, you see it -3, and when we click on this one, you see it's negative 4.5. Okay, that's why that's happening. So what I'm going to do is just select all of those. If we go to Path and Object to Path, now what you'll see is when we click on that last one that we just created, you'll see that there is no path effect. Okay, so probably not a terrible idea after you add the path effect to go ahead and implement it, unless you do want to possibly edit it too. So I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe not. Okay. So hopefully we haven't confused you completely crazily yet. So that you can see there is a bit to it. There really is. So now the next thing that we need to do is we have the inside of our applique stitch, but we don't have the outside. So we're going to take our white fabric outline, okay, and we're going to add a path effect to that. Now, in order to keep the white path, let's go, so here it is. So what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate it, okay, and then we can add the path effect to the duplicate. Very smart. Always, always, always add it to the duplicate. Path effects, and of course we're going to do offset. And in this case, how much do we want to offset? Well, here we used 1.5 millimeters. I don't know what you want to use, but let's just say we want to use 1.5. Okay, let's just say. But we didn't enter it as a negative because we needed to go to the outside. Okay, so now if we go to Path and choose Object to Path, okay, now the next thing that we're going to do is we have two pieces that are essentially make up our applique stitch. So we need to select those two and combine them into one. Okay, so if we go to Path and choose Combine, and there we go. Now, essentially, we've done all this work, and hopefully it all makes sense now. So let's go back over to our Layers palette for a moment. So this is the white background fabric. Let's just call it white background applique. Okay, applique stitch. Bingo. Okay. So I tell you what, let's go to the view menu and display mode. Let's choose normal. And we have, let's see here. What do we got going on here? Let's turn that off for a moment. And let's turn off our white fabric. Let's turn that off for a moment. Okay, so all we have is the tack down stitch and the placement stitch, and there is our applique stitch. Okay, so now let's turn off our tack down and our placement, and let's just focus on our applique. Okay, so yes, this is what I anticipated it to look like. That is going to become our applique stitch. Now, what are we going to do? What are we going to do with this? Well, you could go to Extensions and choose InkStitch and go into Params, and you have kind of a variety of things. So, for example, you could do a satin stitch. You could do just a zigzag, a loose zigzag. So it really just depends on exactly what you want to do. Now you can see right now we can't really do anything because we have a fill, and of course we know that as far as InkStitch is concerned, we can't have a fill and have some kind of satin component. So we cannot have a fill. So we're going to do no fill, but then we'll do the red outline. And now if we go into extensions and InkStitch and choose params, let's see what it does. And so you can see here, right now it's just going to do a simple running stitch, but we do have the option to create custom satin column. Okay, so our border could be satin, as you can see, or it could be something else. So you could do like the E-stitch or the zigzag. So you have options. And then, of course, you have the option of the spacing of your zigzag. So let's just say we want to use 10 millimeters. And you can see we would get, that might be extreme. Let's try 3. There you go. Now that is a quote-unquote proper border, right? So let's go ahead and now let's talk about what's happening here. You can see we have a bunch of muckety-muck, okay? And this is not good, obviously, because that's not obviously what we want. So let's go ahead and apply and quit, and let's understand why we're getting the muckety-muck. Now, I got to preface this part, because we are working on an ancient version of InkStitch, because I have not taken the time to install the latest version. Now, from what I understand, the latest version of InkStitch does kind of help us with some of the issues that the older versions had. But it's good information to know, just in case you run into a similar issue, how you might fix it. The way InkStitch works when you're dealing with an object like this is it works based on nodes. And if your nodes are all messed up, well, then we got issues. And you can see right here, we've got a node on top of a node. We can't have that, right? So let's turn off our transformation handles. But you see how we have nodes on top of nodes? Can't have that. Every node has to have a buddy, okay? So you can see this has a buddy, this has nodes on top of nodes. And another node on top of a node. You see that? So we got to get rid of it. Now this one no longer does. This one no longer does. So we just go around and buddy them up. One thing you can do is you could select those and you could see down here it says 2 of 89. See that? It says 2 of 89. And so we already know that somewhere our nodes are off. So this one can connect to this one we don't need, that one's good, this one we don't need. It's really, I've done this a million billion times. So for me, it's kind of second nature. I'm holding Control Alt and getting rid of the devil nodes. The devil nodes that we're not supposed to have. See how they're just sitting right on top of each other over and over and over. So we get rid of that. And see how this is kind of, let's go into the view mode, display mode outline. See how that one's kind of twisted and warped? That happens sometimes too. But we can click. If you click right there, see how those two nodes are selected? We can go to straight line, boom. Now we still got something kind of strange happening here, but that's okay because we can go right there, boom. And now that kind of takes care of it. So this is a little not fun having to do this, but it's pretty painless, really. It's not that big a deal. So we'll just go around. I'll show you this in real time. Show you what we got to do. He's got a buddy, so we don't need any of those. We will go ahead and straighten that one out. Now I'm doing this kind of quickly So you could be real particular, as particular as you want it to be. Now notice when I clicked on that line segment and I hit straight line, it did something wacky over here. Well, that's because that is not a corner node. So now when I hit that, boom, see how it stayed right where it was. So we'll go back to straight line, boom. So you can see it's not that big a deal, but it's kind of a pain that you have to do that. So you can see here we've got that one has a buddy, that one has a buddy, that one has a buddy. We're good to go. Okay, we're good to go there. Good to go there. There, we're good. No hiding node there, no hiding node there. Sometimes the node will be directly on top of one another, and then that causes issues too. Okie dokie. So now I think we have all of our issues resolved, possibly. So let's select all of our nodes. That's a dead giveaway. And we have an even number. So that's good. So we have an even number because remember, they all got to pair up. They all got to have buddies. So let's go ahead and take a look and see if our satin zigzag, whoa, that's not good. That is definitely not good. Now, one other thing that is kind of interesting is when it goes wacky, you can see it went wacky almost immediately. That kind of is an indicator of where our issue is also. So let's look up here and select those. And you can see it says 3. When I select those, it says 3 of 46. Okay? So you can see there's one on top of another, and there it is. And that happens a lot. Okay? So now that we've taken care of that, now we have an uneven number of nodes, and that becomes a problem. But we can kind of use it, the preview here, as a guide to kind of tell us where the issue might be. See, it starts out beautiful and then crashes. Right there, it crashes. Okay, so that tells me, there it is. That's the issue. Whoa, something happened there. Did you see that? Let's take a look at that. So when I deleted that, this went way over here. And so that's not what we want. So we'll go back to 2. Okay. So let's turn that into a corner node. Select that, go straight. There we go. Now we should have it. Let's look. And I'm glad these little issues came up because now you'll know how to fix them. And now you can see we have it gorgeous. Oh, no. It happened again. Right down here. It happened again. So now we have 2 issues. Because if it happened here, then that means there's another issue somewhere else. Okay, so it's happening down here. So let's look. Nope. Yep, there it is. Sure enough. Sneaky little devil. Alright, so now what that tells me, look at there. There's the next problem right there. Like I say, when you have one issue, you have 2. That's just the way it works. Alright, so now when we go to params. So you can see there's a fair bit of fiddling. But you know, the thing of it is the software is free. So you gotta live with the fiddle. If you want to pay thousands of dollars, then you can buy software that's maybe not quite so fiddly, right? So there you go. Now, let's take a look. We got an issue right here. What's our issue? See that? That's problematic. We don't want that. Okay? So how do we fix it? We're missing a stitch. How do we fix it? Well, let's go ahead and close that out. I'll show you how to fix it. So what we do right here is where the issue is. Okay? So to fix our issue, what we can do is we can click right here. It says break path at selected nodes. Boom. Okay, so now you can see that path is in fact broken. Good, good, good. So now what we can do is we can take that line. We can move that path just a little bit. But basically what's got to happen is that's got to come over. And see how it's overlapping now? So that's what we're going to do. We're just going to, that is supposed to be broken. Okay. So now it is. So you see that? So we just move it over just a little bit there. And then we'll bring this node over a little bit, and then we'll just connect this one basically right on top of that one. All right, so now the right side here was overlapped just a little bit. Now I don't want that. I definitely don't want that. So we're going to connect. What do we got going on here? We didn't want this. So let's get rid of this little segment. We didn't even want that segment. Not sure what's happening there. So we'll go to, let's see here. Get rid of that segment altogether. So now we're back to where we were. So we'll add a little segment. We'll add the overlap here. And then we'll put this back there. Okay, so now we're overlapped a little bit there, overlapped a little bit here. Now watch what happens. When we come back into InkStitch and params, watch what happens here. So we have our, so you can see here we still have that same issue. Okay, not sure why that is the case, but that's okay. We can, maybe it just wasn't, the overlap wasn't far enough. So now let's try it. And now you can see it's all cleared up. Okay, so that is what you got to do. So we could switch to an InkStitch, and that's also a really good applique stitch as well. And the main thing that you're going to have to play with and fiddle with is that offset. Okay, how much, in order for all of the stitches to catch the inside of the fabric, but also catch the outside of the fabric. Those are the things that you got to kind of manipulate, and that's going to be a little bit of trial and error. So now we let's go back and let's just do a zigzag. Well, let's just say we're going to do that for our applique. So there we go. We're going to choose apply and quit, and so we have our white fabric done. Done. So literally the steps would be the exact same for the gray outline and the blue, the individual letters. Okay, so you've got your original fabric. Let's go ahead and turn that back on so we can see that. Okay, now for our placement and tack down here, we can go into params here. So we'll go into params here, and you will see that those will automatically be just straight line stitches, running stitch. So you see it did the placement stitch, and then it came inside, it did our tack down stitch, and then we would come in and do our applique. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and close this out, and let's go ahead and add our applique, and now let's take a look. So we'll go ahead and do params again. And now it's going to show us everything. So it's going to stitch our placement stitch down. I'm not sure why. Why did it do that? Oh, I know why I did that. Let's go to visualize and export, and then let's go to simulator. So there's our placement, there's our tack down, and there's our applique. Okay? And the reason this looks a little bit funky is because we had that real sharp corner there. That's why that looks a little bit funky. But you could actually go in and edit that out and make it look a little bit nicer. But you can see how that zigzag border catches our fabric. We've got that much space. It's covering up our tack down stitch, and then it's got that much space. And then you can see you can't actually see the fabric outline. It's out here a little bit farther. But that's all there is to it. So I say that's all there is to it. There is quite a bit to it. But basically, like I said, your process would be the exact same. So if we turned off our white background layer here and then go to our gray outline, you can see essentially we have the same situation, except we would probably not have these little inside pieces, right? Because that's going to be covered up when we put our blue lettering on anyhow. So, and I would probably get rid of these little pieces for, well, maybe not. Maybe not on the K, but definitely, I don't know, maybe not on the W now that I think about it, because our blue pieces, yeah, I don't know. But anyhow, the process would be the same repeatable process. So I hope that kind of gives you a direction of what you're trying to do as far as the applique goes. It is involved. It is kind of involved. But you could do it, and just take your time. And like I said, you'll have to play with the offsets a little bit. Is 1 millimeter, 2 millimeter, 1.5 millimeter, somewhere in that range, 3 millimeter, whatever you think works for your particular situation. And a lot depends on how wide you want that zigzag border to be. So but when you're talking about just a millimeter or two, it doesn't leave you a whole lot of room for error. That's for sure. Thanks for watching.